Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
And here we are again. It's another edition of Talking Books and Writing and Stuff's podcast. You can find us just by going to Talking Books and Stuff's podcast, but you already know that because you just did it. Today we have with us from Regina, I'm sure, in the Regina area, Regina, Saskatchewan, or as they say in the US of A, Regina, but that's another story. So Tim Blackett is with us. Tim from Regina. We're up here in Radisson, Saskatchewan. So how you doing today down there in Regina?
Good. It's nice and sunny, warming up a bit.
Right.
Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem. So how do you start off your day? First off, what do you have a morning routine or a get out of bed and start your day routine? How does that work?
Well, yeah, I work at the public library here, but my shifts are kind of all over the place. So if I work early, I just get up and take off to the library. But today I'm not working, so I just get the kids ready for school. Sat around and made a TikTok video, and then I was just reading a book.
Which book are you reading, by the way?
Right now I'm reading Anecdotes by Catherine Muckler.
Well,
it's a debut collection of short stories.
We'll put that on our list. So let's go back to your early life, Tim Blackett. Did you grow up in Regina?
Yeah. I was born in Saskatoon. My family moved here before I was even one. And then I spent most of my life here. I spent a year in Indiana, a town called Goshen, Indiana, and a year in Calgary, but the rest was here in Regina.
Land of Goshen. Wow.
Yeah.
There actually is a place called Goshen, Indiana then, eh?
Yeah, it is. It's right in the middle of Hutterite country. There's horse and buggies trotting alongside cars and everything. It's interesting.
Cool. So when you go back to your early days, have you always been a reader? I would assume so, but sometimes not. So did you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Ever since, I don't know, third or fourth grade, my teacher made me read books and do book reports. And I hated the book reports, but I liked the reading. And then eventually I didn't have to do the reports and I just kept reading. So,
can you remember back to one of your favorite early authors?
Yeah, I think the book that really made me fall in love with reading was the Chronicles of Narnia series. When I read all 7 of them, and when I finished the 7th, I felt lost. So I needed to find more worlds to go adventure through.
So when did you start writing actually for seriously?
Well, it was 10th grade, my teacher again made us we all had to write a poem, and then she submitted the poem to this contest. And I didn't want to write a poem. I thought I was too cool. So I ended up plagiarizing a song from this obscure ska band that I was listening to. I just changed some words. But it ended up placing 3rd place or something. And then my whole family was so proud of me, and my grandma gave me a notebook to collect my poems in. And so I felt so guilty that I thought I would try to write my own poem. And so then I filled up that notebook with poems, and then I started writing stories. And then, but when I really started taking myself seriously was since then I had always just dabbled writing in my notebook and stuff. But I think it was 2006. I read Life of Pi by Ian Martel.
All right.
And the tricks he was doing there, it was kind of the first time I was aware of the writer in the background of things, and I thought, I want to do that. So then I started writing, trying to take myself seriously. Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to start. Actually, we have had Jan and Alice on Talking Books and Stuff a while back, and yeah, he did make the point that the book is not The Life of Pi, it's Life of Pi. So
Right.
yeah, he made that point quite clear to me right off the start. So, well, that's a good, like I said, a good suggestion or a good way to get really into serious writing. And Tim Blackett is with us. We're talking about his debut collection of short stories. It's called Grandview Drive. It's from Nightwood Editions, and it's a great collection of stories that will zap you like a 4,000-pound defibrillator. Which is now one of the stories, Grandview Drive, the titular title, 2012 you first wrote that, so this book has been like a while in coming.
Yeah, I spent a long time working on it. I actually think I wrote that in 2009, the first story.
Oh. And then
but I submitted it here and there to places, and then it was longlisted for, I forget what the prize was even called. But then over the years I started adding to the collection, and they kind of all ended up, connecting to each other. And then once I realized that the stories were connected in some ways, then I started actively connecting the stories. So yeah, it took me, I think I wrote the last story in 2018, so
it's been
a long time.
It's a long journey. So a lot of people think, oh, I can write a book and it'll be done in a couple of weeks and then I'll be on the bestseller list by Labor Day. But I guess it doesn't quite work that way, does it?
Yeah, not always. Like I was writing fairly consistently, but I was also in school and working and had 2 kids during the time I was writing it. And so I wasn't writing every day or anything, but yeah.
So now that you're kind of in the groove, do you have a writing routine as such?
I try to stay consistent. It's not like every day I write this many words or anything like that, but because of my job and how I said the shifts are kind of all over, there always ends up to be 1 or 2 days where I'm off, and so those days I kind of book for my writing days. So if people are like, hey, we should get coffee or something, I have to be like, well, no, I'm writing until, usually I get up, I get the kids ready. If I have the day off, I go to a coffee shop and I sit and write until I'm petered out. Usually 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and then I move on.
So I take it you don't use a typewriter?
I don't. I write everything longhand before I type it up, and then
I think that's the best way to do it, just personally speaking, because you have to craft the words in your own handwriting, and you can't go that fast. And then you have to make sure you can actually read your own handwriting. So I think it's a good, and then you can scribble and move lines around if you want and stuff like that. It kind of gets you to sort of revise in your head as you go. Is that what you do? So
yeah, that's exactly what I say to people. I've tried to write new stuff right on the computer, and I find, I just end up sort of rambling all over the place and not really thinking about it as much. Like, I find just slowing down enough to have to write everything, you get to think an extra second about each word or whatever. And then, you get this, if I scratch something out and do something else, that's still there. Whereas if I'm on the computer and I'm like, no, I don't like that sentence, I just erase it and I move on, but there's no record of it,
Right.
So I like writing in a notebook so that sometimes the thing I wrote first and ended up scratching out turns out to be the better sentence. So then I rework that into it. So it just works for me. I know other people think that's crazy, but that's how I always do it. So
yep, why not? And if it works for you, then that's the way to go. Tim Blackett, your collection is called Grandview Drive, and when I first heard about this title, in the back of my mind I thought, oh, it's about Vancouver, because I used to live out there, and there's a Grandview Drive or Grandview Avenue or something, and so I thought, oh, okay, I'll grab this book, but not necessarily. Is there an actual city that you had in mind when you put these together?
Not exactly. Like, when I called it Grandview Drive, I thought I was inventing a street name. Even, it's pretty generic, but it was a new thing in my head. But now I found out there's one in BC and there's one in Illinois that people like actually sort of pilgrimage to. It's really beautiful and stuff. So I get people messaging me from all over. Oh, I live on Grandview Drive. Oh, I went to Grandview Drive, all this stuff. But
that's great.
The city that it's based in, it's called McLeod. It's kind of just a version of Regina, but
right.
I fictionalized it so I can put whatever I want in there. But I was thinking of like a smallish city, still big enough that you don't know everybody, but small enough that some wild coincidences can happen.
Exactly. So Grandview Drive, it's a collection that builds on itself. When you were doing the stories, did you have in mind that they were going to be connected, or did that kind of come later?
Yeah, well, like I was saying, it was kind of maybe the second or third story, or third or fourth story, where I found that I was taking the characters from the titular story and writing about them. Just kind of, not really on purpose, accidentally, but I had fun realizing those connections myself. So then once I saw that sort of happening, I thought I was going to make it more purposeful. So I thought more about which characters I wanted to stretch out and think about. So it was pretty early on. I decided this is what I wanted to do. I had been reading some other short story collections like Visit from the Goon Squad with Jennifer Egan, and even Alice Munro's novel, Lives of Girls and Women, that is mostly a collection of short stories about the same characters. I really like short fiction, and I wanted to stay in that genre, but I also like finding connections between stories within a collection. I think that's really fascinating.
That's great. And it's from Nightwood Editions. How'd you get in touch with them, or vice versa?
Yeah. Well, okay, in 2019, I had submitted it to Coteau Books here in Saskatchewan.
But?
And they said, yeah, let's go ahead with this. They were, enthusiastic about it. And then, but before it actually turned into any sort of book, we were very early on in the process. They got back to me saying, actually, we can't do this because we were filing for bankruptcy.
Right.
So that was the tail end of 2019. So then I started submitting here and there early in 2020, but then COVID happened, and so I wasn't hearing back from anyone or anything. In 2022, I went to the Saskatchewan Writers Guild conference here, and Lisa Bird Wilson just happened to be there, and she was giving a presentation about her work and stuff, and I really appreciated what she had to say. So I went to talk to her afterward, and we got chatting. She asked me about my writing. I told her that story. She's like, oh, my book was going to be with Coteau before they went bankrupt, and then she said, so I had to move it. She ended up publishing with one of the bigger publishers. I can't remember which, but anyway, she said, you should send it to Nightwood. They published my first book, and I was really happy with the work they did and the publicity and all that. So I said, okay, and I submitted it before the end of 2022, and then in March 2023, they called and said they want to publish it. So
and here we are. And then it came out, in November of 2023, the official launch?
Yeah. So it was pretty quick turnaround. I mean, I didn't know anything about publishing, but when I told people they want to publish it and it's coming out in fall, they're like, oh, wow, that's fast.
Yeah.
It was kind of 6 months.
Yeah. So when you submit something, do you do like a cover letter, a proposal, that kind of stuff? How do you do that actual nuts and bolts type thing?
Yeah, that's a lot of it. It's when I was submitting, I was thinking of small publishers. I submitted to agents as well, but mostly I was looking at small publishers whose work I like I submitted to Biblioasis and Book Hug Press and even Tin House, which is American. Just because I like the work they're putting out, and I felt like mine sort of fit with them. Coteau Books was local, so I thought they might be more willing to jump on my work. It's once I figure out the contact there and their submission guidelines, then I write a cover letter just saying I like your work and I have some titles and blah blah blah.
Right.
But it's hard work. Once you writing the whole thing is hard enough. Once it's done, then it's a whole different side of work or writing that you have to turn yourself into like a salesman.
Yeah.
To sell your work to someone.
Right.
But yeah.
It's the actual boots on the ground kind of work that you have to do. In fact, speaking of Book Hug Press, we've had a lot of people from there. In fact, one of our more recent interviews was Hannah Shafi, people you know, places you've been, and that was from Book Hug Press. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we do lots of stuff with them. So your suggestions then for people who want to get published is craft that proposal quite carefully?
Yeah. Craft it carefully and pay attention to who you're submitting to. I don't think you can just send the same letter to every publisher, because you have, if you don't know what they're publishing and you're not even familiar with their catalog, then I think they can tell that.
Yep.
You know. Yeah.
I think so too. So you also have a podcast, is that right?
I do. Yep. It's called Tim Blackett and Friends. It's a fairly new project. I started that because I have a TikTok account called Tim Blackett, and it's gained some traction over the last year or so. So I'm pushing 50,000 followers now. I just talk about books and what I'm reading and sometimes about what I'm writing and stuff. And many people there said, you should have a podcast. I could listen to you talking about books for longer than 3 minutes. So then I thought, okay, I'll try to do that. And yeah, I emailed some of my friends who are writers, and also some of people just that I love their work. I have no business really sending them emails, but I just kind of said, this is who I am, this is what I'm thinking. And so, yeah, I've published 3 episodes so far. Emily Austin was the first. She wrote Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead.
Yeah.
Sheila Head came on. She wrote Motherhood and How Should a Person Be and Pure Color and like a lot of books. And then Jessica Johns, who wrote Bad Cree, was my 3rd episode. And I'm recording with Chelsea Wakelin is coming on. Catherine Mockler. That's why I'm reading Anecdotes right now. I also have a bunch of people coming on.
Yep. I know the feeling. We've got let's see, we have 249 episodes up there now. So
wow.
I don't know which number you'll be, because we have a number in the can, so to speak. So you say you are a librarian, work at a library. What can you tell us about the state of libraries today, especially with all the fuss we're hearing about banning books and things like that? What are you finding in your day-to-day work about libraries?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about the overall feel, countrywide or whatever, but I do know that the Regina Public Library is pretty, it seems pretty established in that the board of directors and everyone, we have our mission and everything, and there doesn't seem to be any real fear of losing funding or closing down anything like that. And when it comes to banned books, we have a pretty solid freedom of information constitution in our thing. So I don't think we ban books. We more take the books that are being challenged and are being banned and sort of promote them. So they're actually a very popular bunch of books at our library are those books that have been banned elsewhere, because people want to know what the controversy is.
Right, exactly. And it turns out to be nothing really anyway. So
yeah, most of the time it's just nonsense.
Exactly. So we're talking with Tim Blackett. He's in Regina, writer, library person, family guy. And the book that's just out is Grandview Drive. It's from Nightwood Editions. Tim, what do you have planned next?
Well, through COVID, I finished a whole another novel. It's very different than Grandview Drive. It's kind of auto-fiction where Tim is the main character, though he's different than I am in real life, but it's maybe 75% based on memories growing up in a pretty strict religious home. and just working through that. And the rest I kind of just made up to make the story interesting, at least. So that's all finished, and the publisher's looking at it, and we're working on revisions and editing and stuff, and so that might come out. It's not officially picked up as one they want to publish, but potentially that's there. And then I just recently was rewarded a grant from Sask Arts to write another book. So I'm about 40,000 words into another novel, which is more traditional, about a group of friends who were really close in high school, but now they're pushing 40, and they're not as close, but they're having a sort of accidental reunion and all of the conflict or whatever that goes along with that. So
okay, thank you, Tim. Before we go, give us a plug. Tell us again about how we can find your podcast.
Okay, Tim Blackett and Friends. You can, anywhere podcasts are found, I think it's there. Like I said, there's 3 episodes so far, but there should be more coming soon.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm Tim Blackett on TikTok. If you're there, that's where I do most of my book reviews and stuff like that. So
that's great. That's Tim Blackett, and it's Blackett. So if this was a Jeopardy category with authors' names that end with double letters, it would be Tim Blackett. Oh, who is Tim Blackett? So go to your store and find Tim Blackett's Grandview Drive and look for other ones by Tim Blackett coming soon, we trust. And check out his podcast and his TikTok and everything else you can find. So again, Tim, thank you very much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.